What's going on, beautiful people? It's your man Louie T here with another installment of the LouieTeeNetwork podcast. Wow, this is a different time slot for me. I'm not used to this. Just got my early morning workout in and feeling good, man. Nice, beautiful day outside. Weekend on the horizon. This feels nice. Not gonna lie. Father's Day weekend. I'm gonna spend some time with the family. Feels good. Got a lot to discuss. NBA Finals. Mavs are pretty much cooked at this point. We'll talk about how it came to be. Also, Trevor Lawrence, massive new contract. What does it mean for the others? And what does this mean for Jacksonville? Did they make a mistake here? Did they pull the trigger too early on Trevor Lawrence? We'll discuss. The trailer for that receiver series that we've been talking about has finally dropped. What did you think? If you've seen it, if you haven't, you should give it a look-see. All of that and more here on the LouieTeeNetwork podcast that starts now. The LouieTeeNetwork is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description. Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the 426th installment of the LouieTeeNetwork podcast. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Good morning, everyone. How are you guys doing on this Friday morning? Looks like we'll be mid-morning marauders today. I haven't said that one before. So a little different time slot for me today, as I mentioned at the top of the show. Won't be in the office over the weekend. Gonna kick it with the fam. Father's Day, spend it with the family. So gonna be out of the office. So wanted to try to get this podcast up. Hadn't had a chance to talk NBA Finals since game one. Right, we talked about game one. We previewed game two. We hadn't talked since then. So wanted to kind of clean up the finals because it kind of looks like it's a cleanup right now. It might be a clean sweep if the Mavericks aren't careful. Trevor Lawrence got the massive deal. Receiver Netflix series has dropped a trailer. And the series that we talked about on the last podcast episode and the pick is in has dropped, and I've heard some reviews on that, and I want to share a little bit of that information as well. So a lot to discuss today, so let's get right to the proceedings this evening, shall we? I want to start first, since we're going to talk basketball. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the passing of one of the greatest to ever touch a basketball, Jerry West, the logo. As a Memphis Grizzlies fan, he definitely had an impact on us as a franchise. You know, it's funny, a lot of people talk about Jerry West and how he was forever a Laker, how he helped the Lakers win a championship because he traded Pau Gasol from Memphis to the Lakers. And while that definitely helped the Lakers, and I don't think Kobe Bryant wins any championships without Shaq, without him, what people fail to realize is in that deal, we got Marc Gasol, which is one of the greatest Grizzly players in franchise history. Without that deal, we don't get Marc Gasol. So it goes both ways. And he was definitely a pioneer. He's going to be the first person inducted into the NBA Hall of Fame in 3 different facets. He was inducted as a player, as a member of the Olympic team. I want to say it was the 72, or was it I think it was one of those Olympic teams he was a part of. And then he's going to be enshrined now as a contributor to the league, I guess GM and all the different things, and ambassador, all the things that he's done. Jerry West will forever be one of the fiercest competitors. Like, just listening to him talk, I never watched him play, obviously, but just listening to him talk, he has that same mindset of a Michael Jordan. And I talked about that on the show last night. And, one of my favorite quotes from him is, people always talk about these young prospects coming up being dogs. And he chuckled when he said that. He said, well, I was a wolf. I ate dogs, and that was his mindset. Jerry West was not to be tampered and fooled with. He will sorely be missed. I always enjoyed listening to him speak. And, there are few players that played in the 60s and 70s that I think people hold in high regard. You look at some of those old clips, they're dribbling with one hand, and the shooting looks weird, and you're like, there's no way that these guys, obviously it's a different time and an era and how things were done, but Jerry West is probably one of those dudes that if you put him in today's era, he would have adapted, adjusted, and would probably been still able to play, right, with his mindset. So anyway, may he rest in paradise for all that he's done as an ambassador of the NBA, and forever immortalized as the logo. So we find ourselves talking about a 3-0 series. I did not think we would be here. Before this series started, I told you I thought this was a 7-game series. I was hunkering down for what I thought was going to be an ultra competitive series. So much was made of Boston's path to the NBA Finals. Oh, it was so easy, and this isn't going to be Indiana or Cleveland or Miami without Jimmy Butler. This is going to be so tough. It's Kyrie and it's Luka, and what are they going to do with the greatest backcourt we've ever seen? And the Celtics haven't lost a game since April, it feels like. Obviously, that's not true, but it's like early May since they lost the game. Remember, the last game that they lost was game 2 of the conference semis against Cleveland, right? Won the final 3 games of that series, swept Indiana, and now they're up 3-0 on the Dallas Mavericks. They have not lost a road playoff game this entire postseason. I told you before the series started, they're going to Dallas and winning at least one game. So if you're Dallas, it is a must that you win one of the first 2 games. They did not accomplish that, which made me feel like the series was all but done. And I said, this is probably over in 5. Well, it could be over in 4 now if the Dallas Mavericks don't show some type of heart and resilience in game number 4. Normally, when you lose game 3, you're probably going to get swept, because that's like the last gasp, the last ditch effort. Shout out to Anthony Edwards for not allowing his club to get swept in the Western Conference Finals. He was like, look, I got more pride than that. We're not getting swept. But we'll see if the Dallas Mavericks have the same amount of pride and go in and find a way to win. But I talked about this before the series started. It's a make or miss league. The Celtics are going to shoot the 3. And if the Dallas Mavericks can't make shots, they're not going to win the series. And they haven't made shots. And they came out like gangbusters in game 3. Let's just go back to game 2 for a second. I think we talked about game 2, didn't we? Did we not talk about game 2? I felt like we already talked about game 2. Maybe we didn't talk about game 2. Yeah, I think we did. I feel like we talked about that on the last podcast episode. Because game 2 was Wednesday, and the last episode of the podcast, I think I did it right after game 2, I think. I'm not sure. But I feel like we had that conversation already. So, all in all, I know we did. We definitely had that conversation already. So, I talked about missed opportunities in game 2. Celtics didn't shoot it well. Celtics had a lot of turnovers, but the Mavs had more turnovers. The Mavs missed a bunch of free throws. And to me, the difference in the game was they didn't shoot it well. They turned it over, and they missed free throws. And the Celtics gave them every opportunity to win game 2, and they didn't want it. I've talked so much about the importance of postseason experience and how vital it is. I think you're seeing the lack of postseason experience, or at least NBA Finals experience, from Luka Doncic rearing its ugly head. He's been in the postseason enough to not act an ass, but it's different when you're in the NBA Finals. Like I said, experience is the best teacher, and Luka Doncic was on his worst behavior in game number 3. One of the knocks on Luka is that he bitches to the officials way too much. That's been a knock for Luka for at least the last 3 to 4 years, right? He complains. He plays with that European mindset. Everything's a foul. Oh, he's on some soccer flopping shit. Oh my God, I got fouled. He's bitching to the officials. He gets knocked down on the ground. He doesn't get up. Now it's 4-on-5. But he took it to another level in this past game, because not only did he not get foul calls, and look, it's the playoffs. Everybody's getting hacked. Everybody's getting fouled, and it's not getting called. You think you're the only one not getting fouls called? Yeah, you got fouled on that last, drive to the basket. So did Jason Tatum. He got clubbed in the head on a dunk that should have been an and one, and they didn't call anything. You think you're the only one getting fouled here? No, you're not. Stop bitching. Get back on defense. You don't play defense anyway, but get your ass back there so it's not 4-on-5. He compounded matters in game 3 by not only bitching to the officials, not getting back on defense, but he started fouling unnecessarily because he was frustrated. That's some regular season shit. You can get away with that in the regular season, right? They might tee you up to calm you down. You might get fouled out. They might throw you out of the game, whatever. Guess what? It was Atlanta on a Tuesday. You play again on Thursday against Charlotte. Go get them next time, kiddo, right? This is the NBA Finals, bruh. And you getting mad because you drove to the basket and you had some contact and you missed the shot. They didn't call it. So now you want to foul 90 feet away from the basket? Then raise your hand to the official and say, yeah, I fouled. Yeah, you damn right you fouled. And that was dumb as hell. Now you got 3 of them. So you don't think about that shit when it's 7 minutes to go in the second quarter because you pissed off, so you're going to take a stupid-ass foul. But as you keep taking dumb-ass fouls, they start to add up. And next thing you know, now you got 4 fouls. Now you got 5 fouls. And, me and Boss were on the phone when he picked up the first of those stupid-ass fouls, when he fouled like Derek White after a rebound because he was mad he missed the shot. And I said, what is he doing? That's a dumb foul, right? Like, in my mind, I wasn't thinking he was going to foul out at the time, but I'm saying that's still a dumb foul. You enough of those add up. And guess what? Boston's parading to the free throw line. Again, a place where they've had a decided advantage in this series. You're the worst free throw shooting team in the postseason. Don't put them on the free throw line because they're not missing. Okay? They clobbered you on the free throw line in game 2, which is one of the reasons why you lost the game. So in my mind, I'm thinking, that's a dumb foul. What are you doing? Me and Boss are on the phone, and Boss is screaming, what is he doing? He fouls Peyton Pritchard 30 feet from the basket. He's hounding him behind half court. As he continues to bring the ball up, he's still hounding him. It's like he wanted a foul, right? And he's pestering him, and you're not that guy on defense. Back, right? Back. And he gets a foul. And Boss is like, what the hell is he doing? And I'm like, I don't know. That's 4, by the way. Now we're getting into that danger zone because we're in the third quarter, and now you have 4 fouls. What are you doing, bro? I don't know. Then he picks up a dumbass foul offensively, trying to go around. And this is what I'm talking about, because you picked up those 2 stupid-ass fouls. Now this offensive foul where you're just trying to get to the cup, you pick that up. Now you got 5. Now you got to be careful, right? And now Jaylen Brown's coming down on a fast break, and you try to step in front of him. It's a block. And I said to my wife, she's watching the game, and I'm going nuts because now he's fouled out, and I wanted him to foul out because he did some stupid shit, and you got to pay for your sins. When you conduct yourself in that manner on this stage, you got to learn a hard lesson. You don't understand that the stove is hot? You go ahead and touch it. Get your ass burnt so you understand. Don't do that shit again, right? This is his indoctrination to the NBA Finals. Stop bitching about calls not being made. Stop picking up stupid ticky-tack fouls and play basketball, right? So I said, I want to see, because, there's a lot of conspiracy theorists out there, right? A lot of conspiracy theorists out there that think the NBA is rigged, okay? Look, any sport is rigged. If it doesn't go their way, it's rigged, right? So I said to my wife, we're going to find out just how rigged the NBA is, because Luka Doncic is as big a star as you're going to find in the NBA Finals right now. If they truly are rigged, they'll overturn this call. That's a blocking foul. He should be out of this game and disqualified. Not because he's Luka Doncic do you overturn it and put him back at 5 and let him stay in the game with 4 minutes left. No, he did stupid shit all game long. He needs to pay for it. That's a blocking foul. Let him sit his ass down and watch the rest of the game with the rest of his teammates. They went over to the monitor. They looked at it, and they came back and said there was not a sufficient enough evidence to overturn the call. I said, good for you guys, because I was sure they were going to overturn the call and let him stay on the floor. I really was. And when he fouled out, I said, good for your stupid ass. Now go sit down with that dirty, stinking ass smirk you got on your face. Sit down and enjoy the rest of the game. Now you're definitely going to lose, right? Because they were on the comeback trail, and they had Boston shook. They had him right where they wanted him, and all he had to do was stay on the floor. They might have won the game. But that's what I talk about when I talk about experience. Having composure is a part of playoff experience. And Boston, having gone against the Warriors, having blown leads in the postseason, having been in these situations before, Joe Mazzulla told his team, we won game 1 against the Warriors back in 22. We won. We were up 2-1 in that series against the Warriors in 22. When you think you're about to win, when you're closest to victory, you're also the closest to getting your block knocked off. That's when you're closest to a defeat. And he's not wrong, because generally speaking, in boxing in particular, when you have a fighter hurt, you're more likely to go in reckless, throwing bombs, trying to end the fight, trying to get him out of there. And you could easily walk into something, right? Seen it happen many a time. And the Celtics were up 21. And who thought 91-70 that the Mavericks would even make this a game? They can't shoot. Boston's shooting the lights out. They're getting anything they want in transition. They're getting to the rim. There's no way that they're going to allow them to come back. And the Mavericks, in order to come back, are going to have to make some threes. Well, guess what? Boston picked a number. And me and my buddy always joke about this. When you get stuck and a run happens, you pick a number and you get comfortable. They picked 91 and they got comfortable. And then they got to 93 and they got even more comfortable, right? And it felt really Minnesota Timberwolves versus Denver Nuggets game 7-ish. I was like, uh-oh. They're feeling this pressure. It's mounting. And they were taking bad shots. I'm like, hey, if I see one more Peyton Pritchard step back jumper when you need a bucket, I'm going to vomit, okay? He doesn't shoot again. He's done. No more shots for you, Peyton. All right, we need a bucket here. Get the ball to Tatum or Brown. Get out of the way. And those guys were forcing it. They couldn't get anything to go down. But every time that Boston needs something, whether it's put your head down, get to the rim, get to the free throw line, or they need a bucket, they need a stabilizer, it's Jaylen Brown. He's the MVP of this series. And then it's some timely shooting. It's, White with a clutch three-pointer to pretty much put them, in a comfortable position. I think his 3 might have put him up like 6 or 7 late in the ball game. And Derek White's good for one of those. But all in all, Dallas pissed this opportunity away. They started out fast. Kyrie was aggressive. But again, the inability to make shots, man, they cannot shoot the basketball. And they picked the wrong time to have their worst shooting series of the playoffs. The guys just can't make shots. I mean, what the hell was PJ Washington doing in this game? We were in the fourth quarter and PJ Washington had taken all of 3 shots. Like, bro, you're the 3rd leading scorer on this team in the postseason. What are you doing, sir? What are you doing? Are you trying to win a championship or not? What are we doing, guy? Like, you're not in Charlotte anymore. You can't just hide and camouflage yourself into the game. They need your scoring, bro. You can't shoot the ball 3 times in 27 minutes of play. What are we doing? This is what I'm talking about. PJ Washington's never been here before. He doesn't understand what the meaning of playoff basketball. Kyrie talked about, I got to lead these guys. They've never been here before. And it's showing. It's showing. This stage is just too big for a lot of these Maverick players because they've never been here before. That includes Luka Doncic. His antics cost his team. He turned it over too many times in game 2. He missed too many free throws in game 2. And then he was acting a fool and he showed his ass. Don't show your ass, act with class. He didn't do that in game 3 and it cost his team. Now they're down 3-0. And frankly, I don't understand how this is. I don't see any way that this gets past 5. You know, I personally think they're going to get swept tonight. That's my honest opinion here. They don't. That was their last gasp last night. They poured all the last little bit of energy they had into that run to try to come back and win. They got nothing left. That's the way I see it. But we'll see what happens. Anyway, I digress. Let's get to the gym dropping session, shall we? I think we shall. Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind, let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, LouieTeeNetwork. Let me open you up. Get you thinking a little bit. So, Trevor Lawrence. We talked about TLaw. I think it was last podcast. I think my guy Chris brought it up. Might have been the pod before. It was either 425 or 424. When we talked about Trevor Lawrence and whether he was going to get a deal, right? And Chris asked, would you do a deal with Trevor Lawrence? And I was like, yeah, I think it's a little premature right now because you're not sure. But if you're the Jacksonville Jaguars, you spent the number 1 overall pick on this guy. You've invested in him. He's shown you he's capable. What are you going to do, right? Like, I mean, theoretically speaking, you do have the 5th-year option. They did not have to do this, right? But I've been an advocate of, if you look, they're in the building with Trevor Lawrence every single day. They know his work habits. They know what he's about. They know what he is as a leader. He showed that he was a competitor last year by gutting out an injury. Even though he wasn't healthy, he still played because he knows me at 65% is better than the backup at 100%. So he gave it a go. I remember the Thursday night game, they pulled off that win on the road against New Orleans. They should have lost because the tight end for the Saints should have caught the football. But that's nor here nor there. Lawrence gutted it out. He was not healthy. It was a Thursday night game. It was a quick turnaround. He injured himself on Sunday. He had no business playing, and somehow he played, right? And they won. So he's shown the ability to get it done. And if you're confident in what he is as a quarterback, you don't wait. Waiting costs you more, which I don't understand why some teams don't understand that concept, i.e. the Dallas Cowboys with CeeDee Lamb. The more you wait, the further the price goes up. Same could be said for Dak Prescott. But they don't know about Dak. I don't know if they're sure what they're going to do with Dak right now. But if they plan on paying him, the price just went up. Every time a quarterback signs a new deal, where do you think Dak is going to go? Nah, I think I'm going to stay right where I am from a price standpoint. No, every time the price goes up with the next deal that gets done, Dak's price goes up. So if you're Jacksonville, I think it's smart on your part to get this deal done when you did. I just don't love, and I've said this before, and it is true, but it's tough for me to stomach sometimes because the next guy up is the highest paid player, right? And Trevor Lawrence just inked a 5-year, $275 million deal with 200 of it fully guaranteed and 175 of it due at signing, essentially. So essentially, he just signed a contract that pays him $55 million AAV, right? Which ties him with Joe Burrow for the most money per year on average. Make that make sense for me. So are you telling me TLaw equals Joe Burrow? Is that what you're saying to me? Because that's what the money says. That's what the money talks. F what the dummies talk. The money says that you're telling me that they're comparable. They're equals. I don't see that. That's where I struggle. Like, had you told me he was making $53 million a year, I would have went, oh, okay, yeah. You know, he's still slotted under Joe Burrow and slotted under some other quarterback. Fine, yeah, okay, whatever. But you're telling me he's worth Joe Burrow money? Like the same amount Joe Burrow is making per year, Trevor Lawrence is worth that? Why? Because Joe Burrow's made it to the Super Bowl in the AFC Championship game. So I don't understand the parallel here. Again, Burrow's issue is health. When he started and finished the season, they've made it to no worse than the AFC Championship game. So you understand why he's being paid the money he's being paid. Trevor Lawrence in 3 seasons has made it to the postseason once. And in the 2 seasons that they didn't make it, he wasn't great. Well, year 1, I think we all throw that one out the window. That was Herb, and it was a disaster. So I think he got a pass in year 1. Year 2, Doug Peterson shows up, quarterback whisperer. They make the playoffs. They get hot at the end of that season, win 7 out of their final 9, win the division, have this epic comeback against the Chargers in the playoffs, win a playoff game, threatens the Chiefs at Arrowhead, but falls short, and future's bright in Jacksonville. You start off like gangbusters last year. Looks like this division is yours for the 2nd year in a row. And then all hell breaks loose. Your season falls apart at the seams. Lawrence gets injured. He's banged up trying to play through it, but he's not playing well. So you could argue that him playing didn't benefit him because the numbers weren't good and the results weren't good. You end up collapsing down the stretch, and the Texans win the division. And now CJ Stroud is the new darling at the quarterback position in that division. And so it almost feels kind of Baker Mayfield-ish to me, right? Every other year, Lawrence is really good. If the trend continues, he should be really good this season. All right. If you're Jacksonville, you're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place because Lawrence already made it known he wanted a deal prior to training camp. You didn't really want that hovering over his head. But at the same time, I need reassurance that you're actually really good, because 1 out of 3 isn't a good percentage for me. Again, let's call it 50%. We'll throw out the first season. That one doesn't count. You're batting 500 right now, but it's a small sample size. So, and the last season wasn't very good. So my question is, did they jump the gun on this deal? Because they could have waited 1 more year, right? Picked up the 5th-year option, right? He's only going into year 4. Pick up the 5th-year option. You got that in your back pocket, and you could have gotten a deal done with him next offseason. Now, if you're Trevor Lawrence, you could have said, nah, F that. I'm not signing anything. Now I'm going to take your ass to free agency. Then they're going to have to franchise tag you. Now you got him by the balls. You don't want to play that game, right? We've seen that game done. It's a game of chicken that usually doesn't work out in favor of the team, right? Usually, once you allow that leverage to be given to the quarterback, you're screwed. See Kirk Cousins in Washington, right? It doesn't usually work out for you. See Dak Prescott in Dallas. You don't win that game of chicken, okay? So generally, it is smarter from a fiscal standpoint to get the deal done earlier, because in 2 years, right, when this deal could have potentially been done, or even next offseason when they could have gotten this deal done, the numbers will look drastically different. This is going to look like a discount, right? Because we're going to exceed 300 million soon with one of these quarterbacks, right? So eventually you're going to look back at this deal in 2 years and go, man, Trevor's not, he's the 8th highest paid quarterback in the league, right? So that's why you get the deal done as soon as you can. I'm not arguing that. That's the cost of doing business in the NFL. Like, I don't argue if a guy's overpaid anymore. That's not the real discussion. The discussion is, did they jump the gun? If he plays poorly this year, you're stuck like Chuck. It reminds me of Carson Wentz. Again, the Eagles were lauded and praised for getting his deal done early because it looked like a deal, because Wentz looked like he was the legit real deal, right? He looked like the real thing. So nobody was faulting the Eagles for getting it done early. He had looked like a can't miss guy at that point of his career. And then the wheels fell completely off. And now you're stuck with this deal, and the Eagles ate a bunch of cap space and dead cap when they traded him to Indianapolis because Carson Wentz lost his confidence. And so that can happen to you. You could end up in a Russell Wilson type of situation where you realize, oh my gosh, we're screwed. This guy stinks. And we still got 3 or 4 more years of this shit left and a bunch of guaranteed money. What the hell are we going to do? Right? You want to be sure is what I was getting at. Did they jump the gun knowing that you still had the 5th-year option in your back pocket? You could have gotten this deal done. Let's say Trevor gets off to a hot start. 5 weeks in, you're 4-1, and he's killing it, right? 14 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 2,001 yards. You're like, whoa, this guy's killing it already, right? No, 2,000 yards is too many, because that would mean he's averaging 500 yards a game. He's or 400. I said they were 4-1. He's not averaging 400 yards. So let's say 1,300 yards through the first 5 games, right? And he's playing his ass off, and you're feeling really good about what's going on in Jacksonville. You could have gotten a deal done then, right? Like, as long as he's not opposed to signing a deal in season, you could have gotten a deal done then, right? But I don't know. I'm just a little nervous. I'm like, it feels a little early. Feels a little early for me. And I'm not talking in the morning. It is a little early in the morning, but I'm not talking in the morning. Just feels a little early for a guy that has 1 good season in 3 out of 3 of his NFL seasons. I don't know. I feel a little anxious, but again, they're in the building with him every day. They did invest the number 1 overall pick on, and let me be clear. And I've said this before, and I want to state my position once more. I think Trevor Lawrence is the guy in Jacksonville, and I think he's going to be a really good quarterback in this league. Okay, so let me be abundantly clear there, just so we're on the same page. I don't think that they've made a mistake here. I'm just a little uneasy with the notion that, oh, they did the right thing. Did they? Because if he doesn't play well this season, what have we gotten ourselves into, right? So I think ultimately, though, he's going to be just fine in Jacksonville. So let's get to our social media maneuvers. I'm a mid-morning marauder. How about that, right? How about that? So if you're out there, you want your comment read, we'll get to as many of these as we can. Use the hashtag LouieTLive to have your comment read on the air. If it is pertinent, we will discuss it. If you want to ensure that your comment is read, Super chats are the way to get that done. Use the super chat function. Make sure you put your comment in first before you hit that button. And we will definitely discuss your comment, and it will go straight to the front of the line. So with that said, let's get to the comment section. And we start with Matthew, who became a member. Stand up. You are the newest member of the MOBB mob. Y'all know what to do. Show Matthew some love. Welcome him with open arms. Matthew, welcome to the squad. Glad to have you on board. Speaking of Matthew, welcome to the squad. And thank you for being the newest member. And thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you, Matthew. Matthew writes, hello from Manila, LT. Hey, how you doing, Matthew? He writes, missed you. Glad to be back after 6 months here post-retirement from the U.S. Hey, man, happy retirement, bro. There's something about enjoying the fruits of your labor. I don't know what that's like, obviously, and I don't know what that's actually going to feel like, God spare life, but I imagine if you've done it correctly and you've set yourself up, it's got to feel just splendiferous. It's got to feel amazing and immaculate to retire, see the world. That's what I want to do. I want to retire, see the world, and just enjoy life. I hope that's what you're doing, Matthew. He says, but back to the USA in 7 days. Ready for the NFL. Live in Jacksonville now. Got to pay Trevor. What else? I mean, you have to pay him, I think. I just don't know if you had to pay him now, right? I know what the difference is between now and next year. I'm not going to sit here and say something foolish as what's the difference between now and next year? I know what it is. The difference between now and next year is another 25 to 30 million. That's the difference, right? So you get it done now, right? I totally understand the not only the optics of it, but for your locker room and what that means. Like it's hard to follow a guy that doesn't have a long-term deal. If my quarterback is going into the last year of his deal and he's uncertain as to whether he's going to be here or not, it's hard to get guys to follow him. It's hard to be that leader that you need him to be, right? But at the same token, if you're Jacksonville, you just need to have a bit of reassurance that we're making the right decision. They don't have that. They're essentially going out on a whim here. Again, they're there every day. They know his work ethic. They know what this kid is made of, right? And they've seen enough clearly that they feel comfortable and confident that this is the right decision. I don't necessarily have any issues with their decision here because from a fiscal standpoint, I understand why it's being done. And I too believe in Trevor Lawrence. Let me reassure you of that and reiterate that I too believe in Trevor Lawrence. But there's just that little doubt that's gnawing in the back of my mind. Like, but what if? What if? I mean, we're batting 500 right now. Small sample size. What if? And it's not like his last season was his best season. You know, it'd be a little bit different if he was coming off of the season that he had in 22 and 23, but it's the reverse of that. So I don't know. They did probably what they had to do, to be honest with you. Matthew, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, Jacksonville City Council just approved $1 billion plus for a new stadium in the last 2 weeks. So Trevor's contract likely came into the approval process. Oh, they get a new stadium in Jacksonville? That's pretty cool. You know, I've always wondered because, you know, the NFL has, you know, kind of flirted with the idea of getting a team abroad. And I've always said that if you're the NFL, you can't expand, right? There's no, like the NBA is thinking about adding new franchises because they have an uneven, like 30 teams in the NBA. It's a weird number. It's not a clean number like 32 is. So I think the NBA could expand to 2 more teams, and then you could have even distribution between your divisions. You know, the NFL used to have the same problem where you'd have one division with 5 teams, another division with 6 teams, one division with 4 teams, because you had 30. It just was a weird setup. When it's 32 and you've got 8 different divisions, now it's a perfect mix, right? I think the NBA has 6 divisions. So if you have 6 divisions and 30 teams, then it fits perfectly. It's 5 in each division. I think that's how the NBA is set up. Don't quote me on that. So if you're the NBA, I know expansion sounds good and you're trying to grab money wherever you can, but you like that perfect number. The NFL has the perfect number at 32 with 8 divisions, 4 teams in each division. I don't think they're going to touch that. They shouldn't touch that. But they've talked about wanting to maybe expand abroad. And I've always felt like, well, if they're going to move a team, it's Jacksonville, right? There's a reason why Jacksonville always plays home games every year overseas. And them getting a new stadium means they're here to stay. They're not going anywhere. So that's a good sign. That's a really good sign. And maybe his deal did have something to do with the fact that they were able to get that pushed across. Sovereign Legacy. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Sovereign Legacy writes, hey, Lou, too dang on early. But hey, we in the building. Look, man, I know this is a weird spot for you guys. It's for me as well. But in order to get on the board, this is what had to be done, okay? Too early for TLaw, 5th-year option. Player has no leverage, not the same as Cousins. I would have waited, in my humble opinion. But it is the same as Cousins, though, because once you get to that 5th-year option, the player, like, look, just look at it like how Brandon Sheriff handled the situation. We could have gotten a deal done with Brandon Sheriff had Ron went to him. Remember, he was coming off of an injury-plagued season, but he was still damn good in the games that he played, and we knew what he was at that point of his career. If Ron would have gone to Brandon Sheriff after the 2019 season and said, hey, we believe in you, here's a deal, they would have gotten a deal done with Brandon Sheriff. Ron came in, he said, we're not giving new deals to anybody. We need to survey the landscape. And Sheriff was like, cool. And then he saw the program and he saw what was going on. And he was like, yeah, I don't want to be a part of this shit. So he didn't sign anything. They tried to make him the highest paid guard in the NFL. And they used the 5th-year option on Brandon Sheriff. And he was like, yeah, that's cool, but I'm not signing a deal here, though. So he kept telling us, yeah, I want to play here. But his actions said otherwise, right? He never wanted to stay in Washington. And so once Morgan Moses was shipped out of here, that was his last straw because that was his best friend on the team. So he had no incentive to sign. And so, yep, they picked up the 5th-year option. Yep, but he never was going to sign. They used the franchise tag, but guess what? He was never going to sign. And so now you got to ask yourself, is he worth using the franchise tag a second time? And they just let him walk. And no choice, right? So, yes, he does have leverage. It is exactly the same as Kirk Cousins. If they would have waited, he played well in 2024, he could have then said, you know what? I think I like the sound of free agency. So I'm not signing a deal with y'all. They're going to pick up the 5th-year option, right? They would have picked it up. They already probably did pick up the 5th-year option, is my guess, because that deadline, I think, is already come and gone. And they picked up the 5th-year option, so they had that in their back pocket. He could have played well this year. He would have went into his last year of his deal next year, and he said, you know, I'm good. You know, we'll just play this thing out. I'm going to bet on myself, and we'll see where the chips fall. And Jacksonville's like, no, let's get this deal done. He's like, I think I'm going to try free agency, right? And then if he plays even better, now you're screwed because guess what? Now you got to franchise tag him. Now he has all the leverage. So I disagree with that, Sovereign Legacy. You really don't want to go to that 5th-year option because now that player is 1 year closer to free agency and he doesn't have to sign anything at that point. I get where you're coming from, though. They could have waited. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, maybe you should have waited, but I get it. I understand why they didn't. Door Gunner, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, my Celtics clapping Mav cheeks. Yeah, it's over. It's a wrap. Really disappointed in Dallas. Really, truly am. I just thought they had more fight in them. I thought they'd be able to make more shots. I thought they'd be more composed than they've shown. But again, I've talked about postseason experience and all of the things that come with it. And this is, you can't hide in the playoffs. This is why I love NBA playoffs, because you can't hide in the playoffs. The shit you get away with in the regular season, not making free throws, complaining to the referees, picking up foolish fouls, not knocking down open threes, lackluster defensive, play, defensive breakdowns, wide open shots being like, you can't do that in the playoffs. You can do that in the regular season. You can give up 121 points in the regular season. You can't do that in the playoffs. And not to say that that's what's happening in the playoffs. I don't think anybody scored in the 120s in this series, but the Celtics are showing that they're battle tested. They've been to the playoffs enough. They've been to the finals a couple of times now. They know what it takes. You can't replace experience. I don't care how talented you are. You can't replace the experience. LeBron James hit in the corner in his first NBA finals. Well, his first NBA finals with the Heat. He hit in the corner. The first time he got there against the Spurs when he got swept, he was just happy to be there. The first chance that he actually had an opportunity to win it, he didn't know what to do. It took that experience of him losing to the Mavericks to then understand, I have to play my best brand of basketball. I have to be aggressive for my team to win in the NBA Finals. You need that experience, and your Celtics have it in spades, and the Mavericks don't. And it's showing. And you're the better team, too. That helps as well. That definitely helps a lot. That helps a whole hell of a lot. Let's get to the comment section real quick. I think we got a little bit of time. Ghost Rider writes, it's my first time seeing you broadcast in the morning. I've done this before, but I don't think I've done a podcast before. I've done Washington shows early in the morning, but it's usually for a specific reason. Like, not because I'm going to be out of the office, like something happened major and I had to jump on live. I don't know if I've ever done a podcast this early, though. I don't think I have. Garland Jackson says, I am 56 and I've seen the good and the bad from Super Bowls to the bottom. I truly believe this team is headed back to prominence. Maybe we can even find the Hogs again. I don't know if you're ever going to find the Hogs again. I'd let that go, Garland. But I do think this team can head back to prominence on the path that they're currently on. Again, it's going to take time. We got to see this thing play out, and Jaden Daniels has to be the guy in order for that to kick off. Like, that's the first thing that has to happen on the field. All of the ingredients are starting to be brought from ownership to the front office to the coaching staff to even some of the players being brought in. All of the ingredients are right, but the main ingredient that's going to make this thing come together is the quarterback. And if you don't have that, you don't have anything, right? You're back to square one. So we need that to work out above all else. John says, I didn't know you were going to be up this early in the morning for a podcast show. I thought it was supposed to be last night. And it was, but then Washington dropped this epic Commander's Log episode that I had to talk about. I had to do it. So I said I'll push the podcast to Friday. John Wynn says, Luka should have stayed in the game Because all he did was flop himself and act like he fouled somebody. What the hell? Like, honestly, Luka, this is who he's been. This is his demeanor. He's always complaining about fouls. Um, this is what he does. But he took it a step further by committing stupid fouls himself. It's one thing to bitch and complain to the officials. They're not going to tee you up in the playoffs. They're going to give you extra leeway. But to pick up foolish fouls that's hurting your team now. It's one thing to complain to the officials. It's another thing to actually hurt your team. Not being available for your team the final 4 minutes of a series, of a game in a series that you're down 2-0 or 0-2, inexcusable. Cannot happen. Absolutely, unequivocally cannot happen. Door Gunner, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Door Gunner writes, double up, thank you for doubling up. Who writes, glad Super Friends is back. So ready to be in Tampa for opening day. My troll game will be present. You know I always choose violence, Lou. LOL. Yes, you do. You live up to your name, right? Violence is your specialty. So I'm looking forward to that for sure. I'm glad that I don't know why your comment just now made me think of this, but did somebody it was Colin's Sports Talk, I believe it was, or Colin Talks Sports. I think it's his handle, Colin Talks Sports. He said that he watched the And the Pick is In documentary that is on Roku Sports, the Roku channel. And he said that Washington really isn't like featured in the series for real, or the documentary. Like, they got a really small part in the series, or the show rather. And he said he's glad that we ended up getting our commander's log, because it's not as big of a role in that series. Like, they made it seem like we were a big part of it, because if you watch the promo, they showed all the teams and a little snippet of them, and then on the cover art, they're the 4 teams there, and it's Chicago, Washington, Arizona, and the Rams. So you're thinking, okay, it's going to be a lot of Washington content in there. And he was like, nah, that ain't the case. You know, we got a little sliver in there, but he said, if you're a fan of the draft, you're going to enjoy it anyway, which I am. And I'm a football junkie, so I'm going to watch it. But I'm glad that lowers my expectation level for Washington content, because I was going into this thing expecting, if this thing is an hour and 45 minutes, I was expecting 20 to 25 minutes of this to be dedicated to Washington. And it sounds like maybe 7 minutes of this thing, 10 minutes maybe of this thing is dedicated to Washington. And that's okay. Now I can just rewire my brain and adjust to what to expect when I watch it. And I wanted to make sure that you went in with the same mindset. If you were watching this only because Washington was supposed to be featured, I just want you to understand that that's really not the case, from as far as I've been told, according to Colin. Shout out to Colin for giving us that update too. I'm glad the Super Friends are back as well. I'm gonna be honest with you, I didn't think it was gonna happen. And that's why I told y'all, don't look for it. Don't check for it, because I don't think it's gonna happen. So glad that it's back as well. All right. I'll take a couple more comments, and then we'll transition to our last segment of the show and get out of here. Let's see. Let's see. Where we at? Dak Prescott is not getting traded to the Seattle Seahawks. They just traded for Sam Howell. It's not happening. And Dallas isn't going to trade him. Miss P writes, thoughts on the league stripping the Falcons of a 5th-round pick? Thank you for bringing that up. I did want to mention that for tampering and not finding Philly guilty of the same with Saquon. So apparently how the story goes is these two teams were being investigated by the NFL for tampering, meaning they jumped the gun in terms of trying to negotiate with these potential free agents to get a deal done prior to the window for tampering. Now, neither team was supposed to be suspected of directly contacting the player, but you're not supposed to be able to contact their representatives either until that window opens up 48 hours prior to free agency, that tampering period, if you will. And both were said to have potentially contacted the agents or handlers of those players in question prior to the tampering window. So in the case of the Falcons, it was like 3 players. It was Kirk Cousins, it was Darnell Mooney, and it was a tight end. Can't remember which tight end it was. Then for the Eagles, it was just Saquon Barkley. So the NFL found that the Falcons did jump the gun. They were in negotiations. And like, sometimes you like, hey, y'all got to shut up, man. Like, part of the investigation came from Kyle Pitts and Kirk Cousins talking about Pitts reaching out to Cousins, a few weeks before, trying to get him on board. And I don't know if that counts as tampering. I mean, players can talk to one another. What you telling me? I can't see a guy in Vegas and say, hey, you should come play with us and recruit him. No, I can do that if I want to, but don't talk about it though, right? Just in case that's the thing. And I think the NFL was like, oh, really? And then Kirk Cousins backed that up when he got the contract. He talked about Kyle Pitts approaching him 2 weeks prior to free agency. And the NFL was like, oh, really? You don't say. Okay. All right. We putting the case on your ass. We putting the case on your ass. Felt like Denzel in Training Day. I'm going to put cases on all you mother. Right? Putting a case on your ass. Saquon, oh, you got him. We'll put a case on your ass, right? So they didn't find any such discrepancies with the Eagles and Saquon Barkley, however, but they did find it with the Falcons, and so they were docked a 5th-round pick in next year's draft, and they were fined $250K. So that process is done. I always want to know how the NFL is able to find this stuff out. Like I told you, when they dock you a day of practice for, too much like how do they know, right? I'm always curious as to how they find this stuff out. Like I know how they figure out if somebody gambled or not. It's too easy for them to track down, somebody's gambling activity. They got too many connections. The NFL allowed gambling into their sport. Every time we watch a game, we see 8 million gambling commercials. They got networks with all these companies, and they know if it's a red flag. If your name shows up, they're gonna know, right? There's no way you're gonna bet on the NFL and they don't know about it. But I want to know, how do they know if you had too much contact in OTAs? I want to know how they figure out if you tampered or not. Who they talk to? Who provides them with the information? It's interesting to me. Anyway, Jackson McMillan writes, Commander's Law dropped something I didn't know I needed, and I love the relationship between all the coaches. You always talk about them sharing a view, and it proved you right. That's the thing that I don't think a lot of fans take into consideration, is these relationships and how much of a part it plays. And I talked about how a lot of these guys aren't here if somebody else isn't here. And it starts at the very top with Adam Peters. Lance Newmark isn't here if Adam Peters isn't here, right? And the guy we got from Detroit that's our new capologist, he isn't here if Adam Peters and Lance Newmark aren't here, right? And all of these other guys that we've gotten, or females that we've gotten from other locales, aren't here if Adam Peters isn't here, right? He's a superstar. He's a rock star, right? People want to be in his presence. People want to work for and with Adam Peters, right? So you get all of these people, and then because they're here, you're able to then get Dan Quinn, right? And Dan Quinn is just, he's a magnet, right? His gravity is just enormous. It's far reaching. And so because he's here, Ken Norton Jr. is here. Because Ken Norton Jr. is here, Bobby Wagner's here. You see how this works, right? It's amazing to watch this stuff kind of transpire. Because Joe Witt Jr. is here, Jason Simmons is here, right? Like the connection, because Cliff Kingsbury is here, Zach Ertz is here, right? So it's like you need people, right? You need good people. If you're going to do hard shit, you need good people, because you're going to need good players and you're going to need good staff members. And how you attract them is by having other good people. So it's a vicious, flavor delicious cycle. And we are killing it right now. We're killing it in that department. Jackson McMillan Orr writes, Adam gave DQ a heart attack when he said Michigan. That moment had me weak. Yeah, it was funny. You see DQ's whole like he turned white, like ghost white. Like you could see the energy leave his body. He went from perked up to, and then when he told him it was the defensive tackle, he was like, man, don't do that to me. You know, that was funny. Like I said, and I said that on the show yesterday, we really got to see Chef P's personality, right? We got to see Adam Peters in all of his splendor last night. I thought that was pretty cool. So let's get to our final segment of the show. And that, of course, is garbage time. And I don't know if you guys had an opportunity to watch the trailer that was dropped for the receiver show. So remember, we had talked about this like 2 months ago, because it really, we probably had this conversation about 3-4 months ago, because remember, Omaha Productions, which is Peyton Manning's company, were struggling to find quarterbacks to sign up for the quarterback series. Remember, they did the quarterback series. It was like groundbreaking stuff. We had never seen that type of access given to a camera crew for an entire season, for multiple players, and kind of have it all intertwined and interweaved into one great series. It was a game changer, right? And Netflix was like, yo, that show was number one on Netflix for like a month and a half. It was so good, right? So Netflix was like, yeah, let's give us more, right? They signed up blindly. They signed up for like 4 more years of this with Omaha Productions. So the problem with this is, it's not like you got writers and you can develop the show and you don't have, you got your, actors and actresses, and all you got to do is just make sure you keep everybody happy. You got to actually get guys that want to do it. Like, this is reality television. But the actors and actresses are changing, because you also have the players and their wives and their families. So the characters are changing here. And so they got the first season done with the quarterbacks, with Mahomes and Cousins and Marcus Mariota, and it was fantastic. But nobody else wanted to do it. Like everybody was like, yo, that shit was fire. But then when it came to, hey, do you want to do it? Nah, I'm good. I want to focus on football. You want to do it? Nah, I'm good. What about you? Nah, I'm gonna pass. I appreciate the opportunity though. So they were like, well, damn, what are we gonna do? Netflix already gave us all this money. We got to do something. So they pivoted to the receiver position. Smart on their part, by the way. Because receivers are always down for some camera time. They're never going to turn that shit down. So they went and they found I think it was 6 guys for this season that they'll follow and document them. And I believe, let's see if we can get all of them. Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Deebo Samuel, Devontae Adams, George Kittle. That's 5. I think that might be it. Let me check. I got them on the thumbnail. Let me check. I think that might be it. Honestly speaking, I think that might be it. Yeah, that's it. So 5 guys. And obviously Kittle is not a receiver. He's a tight end, but you get the drift. He's must-see TV. And they knew that. And they was like, hell, we're doing Deebo Samuel. Might as well do George Kittle. Who doesn't want to see more George Kittle? He's a character, right? And I don't know if there's a better mic'd up segment than George Kittle. He's always having fun on the field. So you get to see the behind the scenes. You get to see them in their element, them training, getting ready, dealing with injuries. We saw that with Kirk Cousins. We saw that with Patrick Mahomes last year. Justin Jefferson had a injury-plagued season, so you're going to kind of see that and him going through that process. The Lions had this historic season in their franchise, so you're going to see that with Amon-Ra St. Brown and them going through that. The 49ers made it all the way to the Super Bowl and then lost, so you're going to see that with both George Kittle and Deebo Samuel. Devontae Adams had a very tough season, right? So we're going to see that with the Raiders. So you're going to get kind of the full NFL experience with this because all of these players were at like different stages. So the Raiders didn't make the playoffs, weren't even close, don't have a quarterback. Adams had to deal with that this year. The Lions made it all the way to the NFC Championship game. They end up playing against the 49ers. There are 2 49er players on this show, and they lose to them, right? But they had this crazy season. Justin Jefferson's the best receiver in football, just got this massive deal, made him the highest paid player at the receiver position, reset the receiver market, but he had an injury-plagued season. So you're going to see that from his perspective. And then you got the 2 49er players who make it to the Super Bowl but don't win it. And so they always seem to pick the right players to follow, it seems like. Last year, they picked Mahomes. They win the Super Bowl. They picked Cousins, and Kirk had the best year of his career statistically. The crazy comeback against Indy. They make it to the playoffs. All of that. Like, they couldn't have picked a better year to follow Kirk Cousins. He was dealing with the injury, so we got to see that. Marcus Mariota had, the birth of his child. He goes AWOL, so that was the perfect year to follow him. They did a good job. And if you watch the promo, it looks like it's going to be really good stuff. I was going to watch it anyway, but I'm intrigued, to say the least. Looking forward to seeing this series, and I think it's going to be really good. And, receivers never disappoint. This is the medium that they're made for, right? Like, Amon-Ra St. Brown in this thing says, when I dance, I need it to go viral. And I'm like, really, guy? Right? Like, so you can, like, receivers are wired differently, and I'm not saying it's a good thing. We know they starve for the attention, but they're going to get it in this series. And who knows? I wonder if they'll try to go back to quarterbacks if they can, or if they shifted their paradigm here and said, you know what? Every year we're going to do a different position. Or will they just make it the receivers because they could do this every year with receivers, right? Next year they could do Jamar Chase, and they could do, Terry McLaurin, and they could pick 5 more receivers. It's not hard. There's so many. CeeDee Lamb, they could pick 5 more guys. There's so many receivers, top-notch receivers in the NFL. This is not hard for them to do. So, or do they say, you know what? Let's do running backs next year, or let's do corners next year, or let's do edge rushers next year, right? I wonder what direction they're going to take. I'm curious. I want to see how this receiver one turns out first. I expect nothing but flawless execution like last year, but I wonder what direction they're going to go in, because we know they signed a deal to do this for the next 3 years. So they're going to do it again. Who are they going to follow this year? I'm curious. Anyway, Kevin the PRF says Mariota was a bad pick. It was like watching the Green Mile. I disagree. I get it. He's not like, he's a boring guy. I get that, but he brought to me context to the other two, because, or balance, I should say, not context, because he didn't describe or explain anything for them. He brought balance to the show. Like, I felt like they had 3 different tier of quarterbacks. And that was perfect, right? You had a lower tier quarterback in Mariota. You had a mid to, slightly below upper tier quarterback in Kirk Cousins. And then you had the elite level Patrick Mahomes. I thought it was perfect. Symmetry. And, Mariota, you wouldn't expect him to do a show like that. It was something kind of out of character for him, so to speak. He's more of a reserve guy, introspective, doesn't say a lot. So for him to open, pull back the curtain a bit, allow you into his life and kind of his process and what it looks like to be Marcus Mariota, that's big for him. And again, he had a kind of crazy season. It started out really well. Then it, went downhill. Then he had the injury, and then he had the baby, and he was like, F y'all, I'm out. I'm going to kick it with my daughter, and I'll rehab my injury at a later date and time. And the Falcons were like, bro, where you at? And he was like, I'm out. So it was kind of a weird situation. So I thought it made for good theater, I thought, but I understand what you're saying. Anyway, I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man, Louie T, here on the 426th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. Heading into the weekend, looking forward to watching Game 4 of the finals tonight, see if the Mavericks can extend this series out to Monday, or if they will ultimately be swept in this series. Looking forward to enjoying Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to all of the dads out there, right? Happy Father's Day to the dads. I'm not saying shit to the fathers, to the dads out there who hold it down. Happy Father's Day to y'all, man. And continue to be the pillars and the rocks of your families, of your households, and continue to show what it means to be a man and a figure that these youngsters can look up to, strive and attain to be, and continue to be providers, continue to be there, not just from a financial standpoint, but from a moral standpoint, from a physical standpoint. Be there for your kids. They need to see you, right? I love hearing about men being men and holding it down. And a lot of times we don't get a lot of the credit. I know, like, my dad in particular doesn't look for the credit, but deep down inside, he wants credit. We try to play hard, like, yeah, we good, man. I don't need it. I don't need any adulation. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. But everybody wants to be recognized. So happy Father's Day to all of y'all out there, man. Continue to hold it down. game recognized game, and a lot of y'all are looking real familiar right now. With that said, y'all take care. Enjoy the weekend. I look forward to chopping it up with you guys on the other side of the weekend. Y'all know what it is. God bless and good day.
Louie.